Hi everyone, thank you for joining. I know it's a bit big ask for today. It's the last breakout session, but we're going to go through it, and you're going to have two really nice stories today. We're going to start with Sophie from ClearScore, following with Erika from La-Z-Boy. So I work very closely with Sophie, and she's going to explain to you a bit more what ClearScore does, but she's at the moment a data scientist running the international market. ClearScore is quite disruptive in the industry because they really want to provide free credit score and financial personal data to people in general. So let's welcome Sophie for the first presentation.
How many of you have ever worked for an organization that proudly describes itself as data-driven? And how many of you suspect that maybe, just maybe, that organization isn't quite so data-driven? Thought as much. In this talk, I'm going to go through how you can use Domo to help you become a more data-driven organization, but for real this time. I'm going to do this by talking about the challenges that ClearScore faced when we first started using Domo. I'm going to move on to practical advice that covers how to Domo, when to Domo, and just as importantly, when not to Domo. And these lessons, well, these lessons are going to finish up by making you guys filthy rich. But first, a little bit about what my company, ClearScore, actually does. Very simply, we provide credit scores and reports to people completely for free. But that's not our main goal. Our main goal is to demystify personal finance for everyone, which is not at all ambitious, I know. Now, we launched in England in July 2015, and by March 2017, we had over 4 million users in the UK alone. We had pulled over 40 million credit reports, and we had fired over 2 billion events. Quite simply, we were staggering under the amount of data that we had. And obviously, with all this analytics team, our analyst team had swollen to a massive We had one analyst per 40 employees. And these guys, they weren't getting to do the cool stuff, you know, the big data, the machine learning, the stuff that everyone wants to do. No, these guys were answering the same questions day in, day out. How much money did we make yesterday? How many users did we sign up? And what's more, we didn't have a way to pull together different data sources in an automated way. We had one SQL post process, but it couldn't really handle tying in different data sources. But most frustratingly, because they were answering the same questions day in, day out, and because we were running so much stuff manually, we didn't really have time to preach the benefits of being data-driven to the wider organization. Now, we're at Domo Palooza. This is a talk on using Domo to become more data-driven. You guys know what happened next. Enter Domo. And I think it's important in a talk like this to discuss why we actually went with Domo. For a start, it's easy for everyone to self-serve. People didn't have to ask us the same questions day in, day out because they were able to find out the data for themselves. We also had the ability, finally, to process the data on-site in an automated way, which was a game changer for us. And also, it was easy to get everyone understanding the importance of the data because it was easy to use the data. It was easy to visualize. Now, very quickly, I want to show you a screenshot from one of our sites. So this is our South African site. We're also in England and in India. And those sites, they all look pretty similar to this. And I think that gives an idea of just why ClearScore has been so successful. Simply put, our site is beautiful. It's clear, it's calming in an industry which is typically quite scary for a lot of people, and it's easy to use. It's easy to find the information that you want to find. Now, Domo helped us in much the same way. Before we started using Domo, anytime we wanted to get any data, we would have to get that data into an Excel document. And then we'd build a graph. Only if you need to share that data with someone in the C-suite or someone on your board, you can't really just send them an Excel spreadsheet. So you copy that bad boy into a PowerPoint. Only You're on a Windows, because let's face it, Excel is garbage on a Mac. And they're on a Mac because, let's face it, Macs do most other things better, and we all know how that graph is going to end up. But you're not here to hear me play my tiny, tiny violin. Let's talk about you guys, and let's talk about how you can use Domo to become more data-driven. Now, this is very much a two-sided approach. On the one hand, you've got all the data, you've got getting it into Domo, and you've got building all the dashboards. And then on the other side, you've got the people actually consuming that data and driving data adoption throughout the company. But the underlying objectives are going to be pretty similar for both parties. Now, objective number one is making it usable and making it used. And for the business execs, your first port of call is make it useful. How do you do that? Well, start with the key metrics. And when I say the key metrics, I mean just the key metrics. Now, I know it's tempting when you first start using Domo and you get all that data in there, and oh my God, isn't it exciting? We've got all this information, and I want to show you everything. Breathe. A lot of people, and it kills me to admit this, a lot of people don't actually like numbers. They don't really think of themselves as graph people. Not quite sure what type of person they do think of themselves, but it's certainly not people who like numbers, who are comfortable with numbers. That being said, everyone in your organization is going to be used to dealing with data in some form or another. Your sales guys, they might not really like numbers, but they're going to be used to seeing revenue forecasts. And your marketing team, they may not really think of themselves as chart people, but they're going to be used to seeing campaign data and new sign-up data. So start with those metrics, give them the stuff they need to do their job, and from there, then you can start to build on it and show them the rest of the data that your organization has to offer. And also, make sure you're rolling it out to everyone in your organization. Now, I'm a big believer in this. Sure, not everyone needs to have access to everything, but if you want people to be curious about the data, you have got to give them the freedom to be curious about it. And this is what happens when you do start to give everyone access. People look out for the data, people expect to see it, and eventually people understand the data well enough to be able to spot issues with your product. And that, when you've got your entire organization looking out for that, is incredibly valuable. But you've also got to make sure you've got the C-suite buy-in. Because if you've not got people right at the executive level pushing this forward, you're going to struggle to make the rest of the organization follow suit. Now, I want to go back to that idea of having the key metrics, but this time more from the data perspective. So let me tell you a story about India. Now, we launched in India in August last year, and as with any new market launch, it was an incredibly busy time. It was a very small team of us working flat out for weeks, and we had a pretty fixed deadline. We were going for Indian Independence Day, August 15th, and let me tell you, Independence Day is not a date that is going to push back by 2 weeks simply because you're running behind schedule. Now, the good news is we made it, we got it over the line, we started signing up users, yay! But to any data analysts in the room, you guys know that the work doesn't stop once the new feature goes live. In fact, that's pretty much when it starts. And I had been working flat out in the run-up, making sure that our data was going to be flowing through our pipelines correctly, and that we had all the analytics attribution correctly scoped. And all of a sudden, I was expected to know everything. And I mean everything. So what did I do? Well, I knew what the key metrics that each team needed to see were, so I got those up on Domo, and then I went home, and I had a shower. My first good night's sleep in a very long time, because I knew that by having the key metrics on Domo, people had the information they needed to do their job. And what's more, it freed me up to do the stuff which I do really well as a data scientist. It gave me the chance to look into the issues and make our site as good as possible for our end users. And once you've got everyone in your site using Domo, in your company using Domo, it's time to make sure that they actually understand how to use it and how to get the most out of it. How do you do this? Well, I would start with a card. Probably want to start with a pre-made card rather than getting them building one in the first half hour, particularly if they're not already used to it. And what do you do next? Well, have a look at it. Try and understand what the data is telling you. Now, my advice to you is basically embrace your inner art critic. So look at it for a while. Admire it. What does it really mean? What is it actually trying to say? And once you've done that and you've got people understanding how to read the data, then it's time to move on to the different features that Domo has. So maybe you want to keep the data as a bar chart, or maybe it makes more sense as a line graph, maybe even a pie chart. Word to the wise, please, please, please avoid pie charts. You cannot understand them. So we'll toss the pie chart. And maybe now we'll look at the different date ranges. So rather than looking at the data over the last 2 months, maybe you want to look at it over the last 3 months, or by day, or by week, or by month. And then maybe it's time to move on to the filters. So rather than looking at the data as a whole, you can view it market by market, or maybe you just want to look at one particular device type and get them excited about it. Isn't it wonderful? Yes, it's amazing, all the things you can do. No, it's not magic, it's just Domo. And show them what an asset it can be. Now, the next objective I want to talk about is knowing when and how to Domo. And when I say how to Domo, I don't mean from the point of view of the end users. I mean, how do you guys use Domo? And I want to do this by talking about the stuff that Domo does really well. So one of the first things that I've already mentioned is that Domo is easy to use. In fact, it's so easy to use that we decided to share our data with our commercial partners. Now, it's not hard to adapt your existing data sets to make them appropriate for sharing externally. And it's not hard to adapt your existing data flows to make them appropriate for sharing externally. And if you don't want to do that, then Domo has some awesome embed and publish functions. And if you don't even want to do that, then you can even just set up reporting for your commercial partners. But the point is, our partners have loved how open we've been with our data. And in return, they've been more open. It's helped us to build better relationships, and let's face it, better relationships with the people who pay you money, that tends to mean more money. Now, I mentioned reporting there. A lot of you guys will probably already be using alerts and reporting, and if you're not, I would definitely recommend it. If you can catch just even one issue early through a well-timed alert, you are going to go a long way in persuading the people in the rest of your organization of the importance of monitoring the data, the importance of looking at it on a regular basis. And once you've done that, it's time to make the most of Domo's other features. So it's connectors. Now, Domo has a lot of connectors. And these allow you to integrate your data as it's sitting on third parties, such as Google Analytics, Facebook, Jira, with your data as it currently is on your Domo instance. So let me tell you about our customer operations team. Now, our customer ops team is awesome. They are the first point of contact for a lot of our users. They are there to answer any of our users' questions or to field any complaints, not that we get many of those, or to respond to any compliments, plenty of those. But in a lot of organizations, a customer operations team is kind of thought of as a bit of a cost center. I mean, they're the team that you've got to have, right? I mean, someone has to talk to your users. Now, our customer operations team use a tool called Zendesk to manage their tickets. And Domo has a Zendesk connector. So one day, we decided to tie up our data on Domo with our data on Zendesk. And all of a sudden, we could see not just how our users were interacting with their site, but we could also see what happened when they lodged a ticket. And more importantly, we could then see what happened afterwards. And all of a sudden, you can see that if a user has a good interaction with an agent, they don't just go back to being a normal user. They go back to being a more active user, a more engaged user. And all of a sudden, this team is no longer a cost center. They're a team that actually adds value. And what is more, that is value that you can quantify. And for any team in any organization, that is incredibly powerful. Now, I've covered some of the stuff that Domo does really well. But I also want to talk about some of the challenges that we faced when we started using Domo. And the first of these is actually loading data in bulk. Now, if you've only got 5 or 10 data sets which you want to add to your instance, that's fine. You just do it manually. It's boring, 10, 20 minutes, but you know what? Just get on with it. But when you've got more, and we found that whenever we had a new feature or a new market, we suddenly had a lot more data sets that we needed to add all of a sudden. Then it gets a little bit trickier. Now, if your data has fairly static schemas, then Domo's API is a great way to get around this. For us, our data has pretty dynamic schemas, so that didn't actually work well for us. So what did we do? Well, my data engineering team is going to hate me for telling you this, but we went rogue. We actually ended up writing scripts that worked with Domo's interface to pull the data from our SQL databases into our Domo instance. And this is 100% not what you are supposed to do. This is not the done thing, this is not normal, but this is what worked for us. And that is the point. You have got to find a way that works. It doesn't matter if it's not normal, it doesn't matter if it's not the done thing. Because if you don't find a way that works, eventually you're going to start cutting corners. And the more you do that, the less data you load in. And then the less comprehensive your instance becomes. The less comprehensive, the less used. The less used, the less data-driven your organization starts to become. So make sure you find a way that works for you. It doesn't matter if it is completely off the wall. Now, another area which we've struggled with in the past is on-site data processing. Now, ClearScore, as I've already mentioned, we have a lot of data. To put that in context, we process every day on Domo about 1 billion rows of data. And we really struggled to find a way that we could actually process this data in a timely fashion, because we were sending out reports at 9 a.m. every day, and if the data wasn't ready, well, then those reports were pretty much useless. So I want to share this slide with you guys. It covers a bunch of the different ways which you can process data ready for Domo, and it covers methods both on-site and off the site. This slide is awesome. I wish I had had this slide 2 years ago when we started. But it's also kind of boring to talk through in a talk like this, so I'm not going to. But take a photo of it. The slide should be available afterwards. If they're not, then email me, because I want you to have this slide. I promise you, if you've ever had any sort of data processing issues, this slide will change your life. And one final thing I want to talk about in the when and how to Domo is how not to Domo. Now, a lot of people, when we first started using Domo and we had it rolled out to everyone in the organization, anytime they wanted any sort of analytics doing, they would ask for the data on Domo. Great job, Domo's brand recognition. But that's not really what they meant. What they actually meant was they wanted a graph. And it is an important distinction to make. Because while it can be tempting to have every single bit of analysis that you do on Domo, you want to make sure you're keeping Domo for the stuff you're looking at regularly. And if you've got cards which are looked at once and then never again, or if you've got data flows which are running in the background day in, day out, with no real purpose, eventually your instance is going to start to slow down. Now, it might take you hitting 1,000 cards, it might take you hitting 5,000 cards, and it might take 200 data flows, it might take 500, but eventually it's going to start to happen. So make sure right off the bat you're keeping your instance clean, you're keeping it organized, because it's also going to make it easier for people to find the information that they need to find. So, you've got everyone in your company using Domo, you're sharing your data with your third parties, and you've got the best damn graphs the world has ever seen. Your data's processing cleanly, and the analysts are singing your praises because they are finally getting to do all that cool stuff. So how do you build on it? Well, you embrace the new. So Domo is constantly releasing a ton of new features, some of which you don't even know you're going to need until they land. And we've already heard about a lot of these features here at Domo Palooza, but there are so many more going on in the background. So, talk to your customer success manager and get them to get you onto a few betas. Not only is this an awesome way to get new features early, but it also allows you to give your feedback And in doing so, you can get tweaks made to products before they get rolled out to everyone. Now, on the subject of CSMs, make the most of yours. Now, at ClearScore, we have an awesome CSM. Shout out to the lovely Sarah, who has gone bright red and really hates me right now. Now, Sarah's been working with us for a really long time, and she knows our business inside out. She knows exactly what we're trying to achieve, and she knows exactly what we're trying to get out of Domo. And as a result, she knows whenever we lodge a ticket with Domo support, she knows whether it needs to be prioritized or whether it can sit on the back burner for a couple of weeks. She knows which betas to get us onto, and she's even been able to get new features added to our site, which wouldn't have been built if we hadn't actually needed them. And in short, your CSM can make a huge difference. But also, make the most of the community. Now, the dojo is an awesome way to crowdsource a problem, particularly if, like me, you live halfway around the world. But also, make the most of the here and now. I mean, I'm sure you guys have all noticed that we're here at Domo Palooza, so talk to the people around you. Chat to people after talks, or in the bars, or at dinner, or on the slopes. Be that annoying person who you're waiting in line for the ski lift, cannot wait to hit the slopes, and they're behind you and they will not stop talking about work. Be that person. And if you can't find that person, then come find me. Hell, I will be your friend. Because these people, they will all have faced their own challenges. And they'll all have overcome these challenges in different ways. And once you've spoken to them, steal their ideas. Because I promise you, some of them will be pretty damn good. Now I want to leave you with a view of where ClearScore was when we first started using Domo and where we are now. Now it's not been the easiest of rides, and believe me, there have been plenty of frustrations. But on balance, we are in a much better place. By having our key metrics visible, people are starting to hold themselves to account and really taking ownership over hitting their targets. We've improved our revenue, not just through sharing our data with our partners, but also through minimizing loss to revenue by being able to spot issues early. My time as an analyst has been freed up to work on all the cool stuff, so I'm finally getting to do all that big data and machine learning. But best of all, the people in our organization finally understand the data. They're more comfortable with it, they're looking out for it, they're more curious with it, and they're more engaged with it. They understand the importance of using data to push the business forward. Simply put, we are finally a data-driven organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Let's welcome Erika now for the second presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. How are you? Doing pretty good? All right. Well, welcome. My name is Erika Janowicz, and I'm the Business Intelligence and Data Manager at La-Z-Boy. Really excited to be here today. I also act as the chair for our Analytics Center of Excellence, and I actually am an active governing body member for Detroit CDO events. So I'm excited to be here today, but just to start out, especially since all of you came to here for your very last session, can you stand up real fast? Okay. How about you take a step to your left? Okay. Step to the right. All right, you can sit down. I can finally tell my boss that I moved the audience, so thank you. So La-Z-Boy has pretty good brand recognition. We do make more than recliners, I promise. We make some pretty cool stationery furniture. We have case goods. We have a lot of options. We have over 11,000 associates throughout the world. And we have a little bit of data. So what makes La-Z-Boy such a tremendous company to work for is how we view the customer experience. And as part of that, we want to make sure that you have a lot of options when you purchase furniture for your home. So we actually have 29 million variations of options for your furniture. So a little bit of data, right? I think a more accurate statement is that we're actually crazy about data. So I actually want to start with a rather provocative question for all of you. Do you trust your data? Maybe, little. I'm seeing a couple here and there, all right. Yeah. Well, what does it mean to trust your data? Do you trust the numbers, the data that's actually driving those reports? Do you trust the analyst who made the report for you? So you know that they do a good job and they do their due diligence, so that way you trust the data. Well, what if I tell you that confidence in your data starts with understanding the infrastructure? It's a pretty loaded statement, but let's think about it. If you understand the foundation, you can build upon that base. When you understand your data infrastructure, you actually open up to understand core systems and systems of innovation. Without one, you do not have the other. Let's take a look at some benefits of actually understanding your data infrastructure. So we'll do the top circle first. It enables trust in your data. Okay, what does that mean? So when I started at La-Z-Boy, I woke up one morning, checked the emails on my phone, and saw an email from IT. One of our servers had actually like a delay in the system. Okay, so this data set was going to be laid in Domo. Okay, great, thanks for the notification. Drove to work, yeah. What do you think it was like when I walked in the door at work? Any guess on some of the other emails? It was panic. We can't trust our data. We can't trust Domo. I heard from other people that use completely different data sets. Can I trust this data set? Of course you can. It's not the one that's affected. I mean, just calm down, right? So when I was a kid, I absolutely hated Halloween. I hated scary things. And my dad taught me that if you understand how something works, you can't be afraid of it anymore. All right, so when I walked into a haunted house, I triggered a sensor. Then had a light flash across the sky, and then we had the zombie pop out. Right? No more boogeyman black box. So what if we take that and actually apply it to our data? Let's go back to that example. This is a high-level map of how our data goes from our ERP system into Domo. There's a resolution and there's a prevention. I want to take a closer look at this picture. Hopefully you can see that. This is where it was delayed. Slow, warning, right? Slow traffic. They did not have their coffee this morning. Okay, all right. These are the data marts that get impacted from it and the data sets that we actually see in Domo. You got rid of that black box. It's nothing fancy. It's a basic graph. And then we have our resolution and prevention. But it actually makes a difference. It eliminates that fear of the unknown. Let's take a look at some of those other examples. When you understand where your data is coming from, you can utilize and find hidden data. Are you using the right data for that area? In addition, what if you took concepts, and actually like machine learning and AI, and apply that to the back end? When you apply machine learning to the back end, you can actually utilize more of your data. All of us have a ton of data. Some of us probably have too much data. So how can we use what we have effectively? When you understand your data infrastructure, you understand the content, the intent. And with that, you can transform your qualitative and quantitative data. That will help not only bridge gaps between departments, technical and non-technical members on any side, but also help you achieve strategic initiatives and be more effective at doing that. Be that data-driven organization. Take Sophie's tips, right? So data infrastructure consists of the applications, the environments, and most importantly, the people who create it. Effective execution consists of securing transforming, and serving the actual data. But I want to talk about the people part, right? All of us love data, and we all come from different backgrounds. What if we take that and apply that with our data infrastructure? I want to start by actually showing you a picture. All right. This is Hopewell Rocks in New Brunswick. Has anyone been? No? All right. All right, yeah, awesome. So they actually have the highest tides in the world. All right, so that's a pretty loaded statement. I don't know if you can see. There are people walking on the floor. They're actually walking on the bottom of the ocean floor. Hours later, you're going to have tides just under 40 feet, and people are going to be kayaking around those rocks. It's a lot of change very quickly. When you look at the picture, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about maybe some of your other past trips, vacations with your families, right? Are you looking at maybe some of the colors, maybe some of the formations of it? Well, what if we take this and we look at it in a new perspective? Let's blur it a little bit. Does your view change about that? Do you start looking at it a little bit differently? Maybe the hues, those greens, browns, red, kind of stand out more? Can't really see the people as much, and you start to lose where the rock ends and the trees start. Let's take a look at one more perspective. All right, black and white etching. It's not quite pixelated, but it's a bit more binary in experience. All of you are here today because you see more than just the data. You understand the topography. You are the data surveyors. You understand that you have source data, internal, external systems, and reports. You know where the system of record comes from. You know what you're trying to do. So let's take this again, and let's actually think about how does data turn into analytics? How does data become decisions? Okay, we're going to do a 5-stage, really high-level organizational process, right? We ask, review, locate, secure, analyze. You ask a question, you review the requirements. You locate, curate the data, secure it, and transfer it over to your BI tools for analysis. Okay, so why is this so difficult? Why do we all struggle with it? Let's take a look at a couple technical aspects. How many of you are working on more than one project right now? We all have many priorities. We also work with other teams. They have their own set of priorities too. They have their own set of projects. We also have data at all stages. That's raw, processed, transformed. We have a lot of data. We then have to validate the data at each of those stages. Further, we have multiple BI tools. What is the right tool for your analysis? Now I want to talk about some mainstream aspects. Right? It's more than just the technical. Is the question that you're trying to ask even actionable? How do you properly and effectively connect business and IT? And I'm not just talking business and IT. I'm talking about your technical and non-technical people of both. Do you have the right data to actually answer this question? And how do we connect our data securely to the tools? Again, that goes back then to the right tool set out of all the ones that you have. And to top it off, because it couldn't be that easy, right? You have constant change in your data infrastructure every day. You're going to use new tools. You're going to ingest new data every day. So no matter where you want to start in trying to help overcome some of these challenges, the first thing you have to do is talk about it. So bring people in your organization together. Talk with them. Hear about what they're looking at, what they're doing with the data. And then make sure that whether it's good news or bad news about your data, you broadcast that to the largest audience you possibly can. So let's talk about communicating to a broad audience. And look at defining our audience, their analytics report model. We'll go a little bit into that. And then how you can actually do more with your BI tools. So let's start. Has anyone here heard of personas? Marketing personas, dev personas? Okay. So with personas, the goal of it is to better understand your customer, your end consumer of that product. If you understand them better, you can better have a product that will meet their needs. So at La-Z-Boy, we actually decided to make personas for our data audiences. We have these set where it actually looks at their technical expertise. We have it where it looks at their data needs, their objectives, their strategic objectives for the year, and also some other issues that they're facing with data right now. It looks at all the BI tools they have access to. I want to understand my C-suite. I want to understand my business analyst. I want to understand my business user, my non-technical user. Once you have a better idea about who your audience is, you can talk to them a little bit better. You know their backgrounds. And with that, you can really start defining the analytics report model. So I know that we have the self-service has become a very big statement. I actually think it's become a buzzword in our industry. The reason why I'm saying that is because I'm fine with my analysts having self-service tools. What I'm not okay with is the CEO having self-service tools. So in Domo, I don't want Kurt to be able to create his own cards or pages. We use a lot of data sets. We're an international company. Depends on what you're looking at. I want to make sure those filters are done for him. Think of it like bowling, right? I want him to be able to bowl, but I'm going to put bumper guards up. I'm going to inflate those bumper guards. He's not going anywhere, right? I'm going to keep him in his lane. You do not want to have an analytics report gutter ball. Never good for anyone. And this last part, do more with your BI tools. We're all here today because we love data. We're excited about it. We want to use it more effectively. The hardest part of new tools is to get someone to log on for the very first time. So once you have them on, make sure they come back to that platform and put more tools at their availability in that platform. Communication and collaboration and actualizing your data can be effectively marketed. You can make a change. And with this, I want you to think about how you analyze the success of your BI tools. Look at more than the statistics of how many users you actually have. Look at it by how people are making data-driven decisions. So since we're here at Domo Palooza, I have to tell you how you do these opportunities with Domo, right? Well, for the first two, we already know it's a great platform, right? It's good for technical, non-technical users. I can put all of my audiences in one place. Second, it's really easy to see and create reports. And we're even learning more as they're releasing new features. It's going to be even better. All right. So I want to focus on the third part. Do more with your BI tools. I actually want to give you some examples of what we've done at La-Z-Boy. I wouldn't say we have everything figured out, but we're starting to go in the right direction with this. So when we started with Domo, we did the default page to the overview. It's really fun, especially if you just have read-only participant access. Nice blank page to log into, right? It's a great way to start that conversation, yeah. So we made a welcome to Domo page. We put our strategic initiatives and our house directly on the first page. It's where our data-driven processes is. It's under our pillar to prepare the organization for growth. This is why we're doing this. This is why we're using this tool. In addition, again, I want to make sure that people don't leave Domo once you're in it. So that even goes with training. Use Course Builder. If you haven't used Course Builder yet, it's a really great feature. In addition to actually talking and working on Course Builder and actually showing people the interface and how to better use the tool, you can upload your own videos. So this isn't just like Domo University and the little videos of how to use Domo. No, this is how we're going to use Domo at La-Z-Boy. This is how we're going to use Domo at your company. I do require training for editors. Yeah. It's too much open-endedness for me. So for 2 hours a month, we do training. This is for participants and editors. We have a 1-hour workshop every month where we build a card together. We have a page. It's a subpage under Welcome to Domo. I know you're surprised, right? Huh? And we actually include our PowerPoint, our one-pager, the example card that we're going to make, and how to effectively use beast modes. So let's talk about the row-level math. Why do we need to validate our beast modes? Why is it important to use a beast mode? When is the right time? All right, broadcast where your data comes from. So going back to that first example, when you had the panic of why is data late and everything's broken, right? So as a follow-up of that, we added a page called Our Data. Now this is kind of cool because we took our main data sets and we put when they were updated as cards. We took that and then we actually created alerts on all of those. So if someone wants to know when their data is going to be ready, when it has been updated that day, subscribe to it. Take out that fear of the unknown. We went further. We took those maps that we did for our data issues or updates, and we made one-pagers. Let's talk about our ERP system. What are we using? Why are we using this? Why do we make marts? What's the benefit of a data mart? With our point-of-sale system, with a lot of options, you want to make sure that your people understand how to look at the data, not just how to create cards from it, but how are people ingesting it. So we all have a passion for data, right? We love it. Use that as that unifying force. So at La-Z-Boy, we actually created a monthly newsletter. It's called the Data Digest. It's a newsletter for Domo enthusiasts. Okay, you're all on board, right? Okay. So we actually use this, and we try to make different data topics relatable. Storytelling with data, advanced analytics, data infrastructure. All right, so it sounds a little bit, I don't know if I'm totally convincing all of you on that. Well, what if we started with just a few data points? Like the geographic location of the North Pole. Okay. Maybe we add a couple factors on a logic statement on if kids were good this year. Okay. Maybe we add another data point that looks at factory efficiency of elves. All right. You can take that and actually make a story around it. The story of Santa Claus. To reiterate, when something's wrong with your data, don't hide it. Make sure that you broadcast any issue. I'm thrilled when the business comes to me saying they have concerns about the data and we should check something out. But if you know something's happening, don't wait for them to come to you. Make sure that you let them know, we got this. And lastly, you really want to look at how to standardize data across. So we created a La-Z-Boy lexicon. Now I know a lot of larger companies already have this, but think of it as a one-stop shop for your acronym finder and a data dictionary. This is great for not just onboarding of new people, but actually holding people accountable. In our data dictionary, I have a formal definition of revenue by corporate accounting. Next to the La-Z-Boy lexicon app, we actually even have a way where you can submit terms, and you have to put what department you're with. We'll actually include that. Once you set that standard, you can hold people accountable. We also recently acquired Joybird, actually last July. Their definition of revenue was different than how we looked at revenue. If you have mergers and acquisitions, or even just work with multiple departments, having a way to standardize what your data is saying is tremendous. The last point I want to talk about is taking initiative. And I know there's been the rise of the Analytics Center of Excellence, or Analytics Committee, throughout the industry. We just launched ours in November. Okay, it might be a little late to the game, but it's really a great idea to start putting people with like-minded ideas in the same room. What if you have a subject matter expert who's really good with data architecture? And what if you have someone else who's really interested in learning more about data architecture but has no idea really what it is? You can use this and actually have initiatives, data initiatives around it. We can place these people in the same room together. I can promise you that that data architect is going to get some questions he's never heard of before. You know what? Maybe he might be even start thinking about it in a different way. That's where innovation happens. The Analytics Committee vision is to establish and implement a transparent data process to foster decision-making through knowledge management and solution enablement. End of the day, we want a transparent process and we want to share knowledge. That's it. You can drive change. So before I wrap up, I just want to do the 3 main takeaways from today. The first is more than a Schoolhouse Rock song, I promise. But knowledge really is power. Understanding your data infrastructure will empower individuals. It will empower your team. It will empower your company. You can transform data, qualitative and quantitative data, in really an accretive manner. It's very powerful. The second main takeaway is that you can manage an agile infrastructure. First up, you acknowledge it exists. All right. But after that, you can actually manage it through operational improvement, through governance, through cross-functional collaboration, most importantly, through effective communication. Make sure you bring your audience into that conversation. Get them excited about data and keep them excited. And lastly, transparency is key. Keep this open line of communication. Make sure that your community knows that you're excited about data and that when an issue happens, you're there and you want to make it better. You can provide the simple and high-level diagrams. Make sure you understand your audience and how to talk to them. And continuously make sure that your data is transformable, that you can actually use it and make decisions. I want to thank you all for your time today. Before we close up, Sophie, did you want to come up? We can answer any questions. Happy to help.
Any question in the audience? No one? You're all tired, right?
Yeah.
I have a question.
So Sophie, you said that you pulled in a lot of different data sets dynamically. Can you explain that a little bit more?
I thought this might be the case. Do you mean when actually loading in all the data sets?
Yeah, like we use Workbench and we use SQL to pull in from like 15 different databases, and it's kind of a pain. So we're just wondering how you guys did that.
So we used to use Workbench. It's worth saying for Excel documents. The issue is because we were running those on local machines, it meant that whenever they were turned off, the data wasn't updating. So for the stuff we had on Workbench, the Excel files, we actually switched to using the Dropbox connector, because you can run that on a schedule every 15 minutes, every hour, at set times, what have you. So that was the most valuable for those sorts of files. In terms of for SQL, so we use when our data was initially on MySQL, we used the MySQL connector, then we switched to the Redshift connector. But our difficulty was actually with the setting up of the data sets. So I don't know if that's the area you're struggling with. So I mean, the script basically runs in the same way. It simulates someone setting up the dataset manually. So it looks at the interface, and it kind of relies on everything staying in the same place in the UI. So it can break occasionally, but the point is it works because the sort of user input interface, that allows for a lot more flexibility because you can do select star, so if new properties get added to your schema, then they'll get automatically updated, whereas with Domo's API, certainly when we were setting up initially, you specified the columns, and then if another column got added, that wasn't going to automatically flow through. But once the datasets were set up on the Redshift connectors and stuff, then the data just flows through at a regular basis. So there, it's not really a problem for us.
So this one's for Erika. I actually like the idea of the newsletter. Can you talk about some other ways that you've sort of promoted or evangelized or gotten people behind analytics in terms of just giving them updates, or what sort of the right balance is there?
We did a couple different things. Usually they're around 2 pages long, kind of like a front and back that we do in a newsletter. I have done some that specifically look at Domo updates and new things that some of our internal people and champions per area, or Domo champions, have already played with and tested out. So sometimes we'll try to market some of those opportunities. We do have multiple BI tools. I know we're trying to get away from Excel. We still use Excel, right? So I think if you can try to make it fun, like for February, we did a metadata dating game. So which data tool is right for you, right? And so just, it's more about trying to think of it creatively or see what's going on in your organization. I know the first year, those monthly ones were based upon something that I was dealing with that month. And so let's actually talk about it. I'm sure it's not just this one team that's impacted. I don't know if that answers.
Same as for Sophie.
Okay.
I have the same question actually for Sophie.
In terms of how we keep people updated on the data. Well, we're a small enough organization that we tend to just email people when we know there's something up with it, or we communicate via Slack. It's generally the most straightforward method, but as Erika said, the most important thing is getting out ahead of it. So if anything is wrong, you want to be telling people up front. Because one thing that we found is even if people didn't say, I think there's something a bit odd, they would still find that. They'd just maybe, for whatever reason, maybe they got caught up with something else. And when you actually spoke to people about it, they go, oh yeah, I noticed that. And it does, if you leave these issues unattended, or if you don't say we know about it and we're on it, then people do start to lose confidence in the data. And they do sort of say, oh, can I really trust the rest of it? Again, education and understanding how the data flow works is really key, because they just panic that everything's broken.
Anyone else before we close? All right, so the next session starts at 4:45. However, apparently there is drinks and nibbles there, so if you head out before, you might have some snacks. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.